Hello, and welcome to the Emmy Awards. I'm your host, Emmy Cardinale, and this is my podcast where I talk about what I've been watching or rewatching once a week. If this is the first episode of mine that you stumble upon and you enjoy it, please feel free to follow me wherever you listen to podcasts, like and subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube, all of that good stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. I can't express how much it means to me when people listen, so thanks if you're listening. So, as the title suggests, this episode is going to be about the Survivor 50 finale, as well as my thoughts on Hacks Season 5, Episode 9. Now, my goal is to get this out before Episode 10, the finale of Hacks, airs, but with full transparency, I'm recording this quite late on Wednesday evening, and because of that, I don't know if I'm going to be able to edit it before like 6 p.m. Pacific when the Hacks episode goes live. So if this episode goes out after the Hacks episode has already aired, I haven't seen the finale. So I'm recording this Wednesday. I have yet to see the Survivor or the Hacks Season 5 finale. So this is just going to be about episode 9. I'm going to start with Survivor and then I'm going to jump into Hacks. But thank you so much for tuning in. Timestamps will be in the description. So if you just want to skip to the Hacks section, completely understand. Now, the main reason that I'm starting later than I had intended to record is because I didn't take notes when I was watching the Survivor 50 finale last week. And I really wanted notes because I really wanted to take notes because I didn't want to forget anything. So then I rewatched the finale to take notes. So that took me a while. And that's the reason that I'm late. But anyways, let me just jump straight into the Survivor 50 finale. So in the live segment, Jeff brings up the celebrity superfans and thanks them for bringing in a new audience. I find that offensive, okay? I find that offensive. As somebody who, this was my first season watching live of Survivor, it's not the first season I watched all the way through because I did, in the time that this was airing, I have watched many a season. I started with David versus Goliath. I've watched Heroes, Villains, Micronesia. Not in this order. I just don't remember what order I watched them in. Heroes, Villains, Micronesia. I'm watching China right now. I watched season 29. I watched All Stars. I watched The Amazon. I've watched a few seasons now. I'm watching Tocantins right now at the same time that I'm watching China. So I've watched a few seasons since this started, but as somebody who, this was my first season of Survivor watching live, I find it offensive to insinuate that Mr. Beast or somebody else is the reason that people started watching. Okay, I tuned in for my queen, Cirie. So we need to be thanking Cirie for bringing people in. I actually don't know how many people started watching Survivor just for Cirie, but I am one of those people. Anyways, when we pick up back on the island, Rizzo saying in his confessionals that they blindsided Cirie. How dare he say that? How dare he? I don't really think Cirie was blindsided. Like, maybe she wasn't. I don't think Cirie was blindsided. I feel like Cirie is very intelligent. Not that you're stupid if you're blindsided, but I think Cirie had enough of a grasp on the situation to know if she was in danger. Like, I don't think Cirie is somebody who was I don't think she was blindsided. I find that offensive. How dare you say that you blindsided Cirie? Maybe she wasn't expecting you to vote for her, but I don't think she was blindsided in the traditional sense of doesn't think she's going home and then goes home. Like, I don't think Cirie was blindsided, and I find it offensive that you insinuated that you blindsided her. Like, how dare you, Rizzo? Anyways, Tiffany's mad, understandably. Basically, going into the final 5 immunity challenge, it's between who they're going to vote for. It's between Tiffany or Aubrey. So if Tiffany wins this immunity, which she has a good chance of winning because she's been really good at comps or challenges. They're not called comps in Survivor. She's been really good at the challenges. So if she wins, then they vote Aubrey. But if she loses, they're voting Tiff. That's the way the final 5 plan is going. Rizzo has his idols, so he's safe because he's going to play his idol regardless. So he's not really an option. And then Joe and Jonathan aren't going to turn on each other. So it's between Tiffany or Aubrey. It really depends on who wins the challenge. Basically, it really depends on if Tiff wins the challenge. Not that Aubrey can't win a challenge, but I feel like going into the final competition, the biggest question mark was like, will Tiffany pull out this win because she'd been doing such a good job? And also then when I saw the competition, I was like, okay, it really depends. Like it's really going to come down to Tiffany based off of the physicality of it. The Final Four immunity challenge was a little bit less physical in the way that the Final Five one was. So I think, you know, if I'm making sense, and this isn't to diss any competitors on Survivor, I think that the challenges aren't equitable enough. And I've been through many a struggle with the inequitable comps when it comes to Big Brother as a Big Brother fan. So I'm not trying to shit on any one competitor when I'm complaining about the way the challenges work. But alas, let me move on. In the final, in the after show that they're intercutting with the finale, Jeff gives Suri an award for like the spirit of Survivor. Like, okay, you couldn't have given her $1 million. Sorry, like not to jump ahead because this happens like literally right at the end, but there was like a fan vote and Suri did win the fan vote, but it was $100,000. And not that $100,000 isn't a lot of money. Okay, it is a lot of money. I'm happy for Suri getting that money. But as I said, I recently watched Survivor All Stars and they give Rupert $1 million for like some kind of like a similar fan favorite vote thing. They give him $1 million, but they couldn't give Suri $1 million. With all the love in my heart towards Rupert, Suri deserves $1 million more. So that pissed me off. But anyways, the Final Five immunity challenge is like a bunch of steps, and then at the end you get to a puzzle. And the puzzle comes down like super, super close between Jonathan and Tiffany. And why am I going to cry thinking about Tiffany losing this? But Tiffany loses, and it's like so close in a way that very much angered me. And at this point, I was like, okay, Tiffany's going, yay. Rizzo's out fourth. Like, this is the final three. Whatever. Okay. Back in the live studio audience, we get a segment with Rick Devens and Christian, and it was cute. It was sweet. Too many mentions of Mr. Beast, but not even at this specific moment. I just hated every time they brought up Mr. Beast. It's like, okay, enough of Mr. Beast. Back on the island, Rizzo tells Tiffany that like she's too good of a competitor or he wouldn't win against her. And she's like, is there anything that I can say to change things? And he goes, no, I don't think so. And you know what? I appreciated the straightforwardness at least. So then she didn't waste her energy trying with Rizzo when Rizzo was like pretty firm on the fact that he wasn't going to change his vote. So in that regard, shout out to Rizzo for being straightforward. Does it suck from Tiffany's position to hear? Yeah. But I also do think on some level, in this stage of the game, knowing that you're going to go is probably freeing. She got some things off her chest as she was leaving and all of these things that I think I'm glad that she knew she was going. But it was still just like frustrating. I do understand it though. If the three boys have really decided, it's like ideally I would have wanted like Joe to go. Rizzo can't go because he has his idol, so he's going to save himself. It's pointless to vote for him. Jonathan is safe, so it's the three options of people going home, like who could go home, are Joe, Tiff, and Aubrey. So it's like between the three, obviously I would have preferred Joe going, but like with who people are aligned with, it's between Aubrey and Tiffany. And as much as I really love Tiffany, I do think between the two, and this isn't to discredit Aubrey's game at all. I think if I was in the show, like if I was playing, I'd be like, well, Tiffany has more competition wins than Aubrey. So if it's between those two people, again, if I was there, I would have gone for Joe instead of either Tiffany or Aubrey. But if it was between those people, like they decided it has to be Tiffany or Aubrey, between the two, Tiffany does seem like the better person to get out when she's not safe because she has a better chance of winning the immunity. I mean, that's ironic to say considering the fact that, spoiler, Aubrey wins the Final Four immunity. But I don't know why I'm saying the spoiler. The episode aired last week. Like at this point, you've watched the finale. Sometimes I hate jumping ahead because I'm trying to go chronological. But like it does feel ironic to say that. But I do just understand that like approach of like, well, Tiffany has a better chance of beating me, so it makes more sense to take Aubrey. Again, I don't know why Joe isn't a factor at all, but whatever. I guess they knew that they were gonna, like, at this point, and also this is with the hindsight of how the whole final tribal happened and the way the votes shook out. But I guess Joe, maybe to me, came across as more like, why wouldn't they get rid of Joe? But I do think Joe clearly had no shot of winning in the final three. So I guess it makes sense with all the knowledge I have now of the way the jury viewed Joe that Tiffany is a bigger threat even within Joe. So I guess I understand if they're thinking like Joe's an easy person to win against. I have a better chance of beating Aubrey in the final competition. Let me vote out Tiffany. I guess I understand the thought process if I'm putting all the pieces together. But anyways, Tiffany is not going out without a fight, though, as much as she like gives up on trying with Rizzo because he says that she has no chance. She does begin to try to argue that Aubrey has a better story in the end. Aubrey's a bigger threat than she is. Again, nobody's even trying, like, Joe's not even a factor of we should get out Joe. At this point, it's like, I'm trying to convince you to vote Aubrey out instead of me. She has a better chance of winning over me. Like, and you know what? She gave it a good try. As I said, I do think if I was a fellow player on the show, I would be thinking Tiffany has a better chance of winning the final immunity between Aubrey and Tiffany. So if I was in the position, I would have probably also voted for Tiffany, as much as I love Tiffany as a viewer, and I'm disappointed in the fact that they voted for Tiffany. And I also have to say that it's really, really disappointing how close she was, because we could have gotten out Jonathan. Although, I don't know, because in the final, it probably would have then been they vote out Aubrey instead of voting out Jonathan. And then I guess if maybe Tiffany wins the final immunity, but because between the people competing, Joe and Aubrey were the last two standing, and then Joe dropped his ball. I'll get to it. So I'm like, in an alternate universe, if Tiffany doesn't win that, then Joe does. I don't know. The game would be very different if Tiffany won that last immunity. But I don't think that, like, I don't know who would have won then. It really depends then who wins that final immunity, and then who, like, there are many different possibilities of how things would have turned out. Because who would Joe take to the, anyways, I'm jumping ahead of myself, sorry. Back in the studio audience, we got an interview or like a call-in Zoom thing with Mike White. He's off working on the White Lotus. Charlie and Camilla are going to be in season 4. That's cool. Happy for them. Now that I know Survivor people, I really want to go back, and especially because I watched his original season, David versus Goliath, and the cameos up until season 4, they've all been people from seasons he only played on one season before this. They were all from his season, David versus Goliath. So I kind of want to rewatch White Lotus, find the people I recognize. Because I would recognize them now. I've watched his season. At the tribal council, Tiffany, again, as I said earlier, is kind of like going all out there and is not like holding back at all. And she's kind of like, it really bothered me, the discrepancy of like, everybody says I'm a threat, but it's like Joe has the same amount of competition wins, and it's like when the boys win, it's one thing, and then when I win, it's another. And I was gonna say we have more context now, but if you're not watching interviews and you don't have the more of the context, but Tiffany said that Jonathan literally said to her at some point when she brought this up, like back at the camp, she was like, Joe has the same amount of wins. And he goes, yeah, but you're a girl. Like, he said that verbatim to be like, well, the record for women is different than the record for men. So you're a bigger threat because you're like, which is really, really, I understand why she would feel that way. I understand why you would be so tired. You would be so tired because it's like, first of all, the fact that there even is like a difference between the amount of comp wins of like a woman and a man on Survivor just indicates the fact that you already have an unfair advantage. So why are you acting like she is such a threat that Joe isn't? I mean, it just pisses me off. It pisses me off. And there are a lot of things about Jonathan that I just don't like. And I have to say, in my last episode, I said that Joe pissed me off more than Jonathan did. And like in the show, he kind of did, honestly. But since and afterwards, and honestly, some of the moments of Joe in the finale kind of warmed my heart. And I was like, you know what? Jonathan sucks more. I'm sorry to Joe for maligning him. I found him more annoying, Joe, on the edited show because of his reactions to Rick Devens, honestly. But as a whole, who they are as people, I don't like Jonathan more than I dislike Joe. So I apologize to Joe because in comparison, you're way better than Jonathan. Okay. I'm so sorry for maligning you. I just did find it a little bit annoying how you were like, who cares about the show? But you know what? I would prefer that kind of play versus somebody who like there's a blatant double standard between the way they view their competitor, like their fellow players based off of like gender. Like I would prefer Joe and his like annoying I don't want people to be performative thing over somebody who says to their fellow competitor, yeah, you're a woman, in response to her being like, Joe's why is Joe not anymore of a threat based off of the comp wins? Because here's the thing, the better answer to that question would be I have a better chance at winning against Joe than I do winning against you. At least Rizzo was like, I don't think I can beat you in the end. Jonathan can't say that because he can't allow himself to acknowledge the fact that he would lose to a woman. So he has to make up some excuse and be misogynistic in order to argue that, instead of just saying you're a bigger risk with the jury than Joe is. I have a better chance at beating Joe. Joe and I have the same numbers mostly, and I did more than Joe. So there aren't any votes that he's going to get that I wouldn't get. But in a jury, there are votes that you are guaranteed that I'm not going to get. You know, like, but he can't say that because he doesn't have the humility to realize that, like, or think that's fair. Like, Jonathan is genuinely so insufferable as a Survivor player. And let me just keep going. I'm getting really mad at Jonathan. She quotes Aubrey from the previous tribal council saying that she just feels like they're cutting the wires of a bomb in the wrong order. Votes are cast and Tiffany goes. Rizzo used the idol on himself. Now, if I was Rizzo in this situation, I mean, I don't know, because I guess there's nobody that he would want to save in this place. But if I was Rizzo, I would have done something crazy with the idol and played it on somebody else. Like, genuinely, if I was on Survivor, I really feel like I wouldn't be thinking that much about winning. I'd be like, I don't think I'm going to win. So I would do crazy things. Okay, I'd be playing my idol on other people. Like when Aubrey played her idol early in the season because she was like, people know about the idol, so now it's become something. I would never do that. Okay, I'm not playing my idol unless I'm playing it on myself or I'm doing something crazy and playing it on somebody else. Okay, I'm never going to play my idol just to flush it. Okay, let other people flush my idol by targeting me. Like I'm not playing my idol just to play my idol. Okay, I would do something crazy with an idol. Nobody was gonna vote for Rizzo here, and like yeah, none of them are gonna vote for Rizzo because they knew that he had the idol, so he was safe. But if I was Rizzo, I would have taken that opportunity to do something crazy and save like Aubrey or Tiffany or whoever. I would have saved Tiffany if I was in this case. Now, why would he do that when he just told Tiffany that he couldn't win against her? I know. Okay, it wouldn't be a smart move, but I would want to do something crazy. So if I was Rizzo, I would have used my idol in somebody else. Like I would have done something crazy. You know, it's so funny because when I'm watching a show like Big Brother and somebody uses the veto, like a nominee is on the block and they win the veto and they use it on somebody else on the block, I always think those people are the dumbest people ever and it angers me. But on Survivor, I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. Play your idol on somebody else. Let's do something crazy. Like I find that so obnoxious. You know what it is though? And here's the difference, okay? Because it's not like Rizzo was 100%. Like the difference of a veto and an idol is that like if Rizzo were to be a nominee and he wins the veto and then he uses it on somebody else, he's still not safe. The reason I think playing an idol on somebody else is really interesting is because you can do a fake out. Or nobody's voting for you anyway because they know you have this idol. So then you play it on somebody else as a fake right. You gotta fake right and break left, or break left and fake right, whatever the High School Musical lyric is. Like, you know what I mean? On Big Brother, if you're on the block and you win the veto and you don't use it on yourself, you're still on the block. So it's not the same. It's not the same. I think that's why it's so interesting a move on Survivor, whereas it's just objectively a stupid one on Big Brother. Like, I would be annoyed if somebody did that on Big Brother, but in Survivor, it'd be like, fuck it, use your eyeball on somebody else. I think, again, it would have been stupid in this scenario because that wouldn't have benefited him at all. Who could he have used it on that it would have benefited him? Literally nobody. But I just think that's such a fun move when done well. And anyways, let me move on. Tiffany goes home, R.I.P. She went out with a bang, though. She was like, at least I got it off my chest on the way out. And I appreciated that. Was so happy to have her throw the last strays that she could. Going into the Final Four immunity, Jonathan literally is like, we just can't have Aubrey win. We can't have Aubrey win. This pissed me the fuck off. This pissed me the fuck off. I really don't like Jonathan. I really don't like Jonathan. And the Final Four immunity challenge is a competition that this one was really cool. And this one was not one that I think everybody had a fairly good playing field. You drop a ball and then you wait, and then you have to you can't have the balls drop. You only have one hand. You keep adding more balls. Then it's very, very interesting competition to watch. And also I think would be really fun to play. And Aubrey wins. And I was actually super happy. As I said, Aubrey and Joe are the last two, and then Joe drops. I think Jonathan drops first, then Rizzo, then it's Joe and Aubrey wins. I'm pretty sure. She's speechless. She really can't believe it. She explains in confessionals that when she saw that this was an option for the final competition that the fans could vote on, she bought it on Etsy, a version of it. And it was the one challenge that she practiced. And it was the one win she really needed. And I was at this point, so emotional. And I was honestly, Aubrey winning, I'd be happy with at this point. The thing is, I really, going into the season, the only person I knew was Survie. I grew a deep fondness for Tiffany, for Rick Devens, for even Rizzo, as much as he annoyed me towards the end. But I really, once Survie went, I was I don't really know who I want to win at this point. I don't really the people. For me, would have been Tiffany, Rizzo, and then Aubrey was third. Okay. And then Joe and Jonathan were tied for last. At this point, I was you know what? Aubrey, if she wins, I'm happy. I'm happy with the outcome. I think she earned it. I think this is a really compelling final arc for her. I think the fact that she won this challenge, she only had one win across her time on Survivor with individual immunity. The fact that she won this one and was the most important one for her to win, I think really did add to her case. I think she played a good game for all the other reasons that people voted for her, but I think this was a huge, necessary puzzle piece to get to the end. And I also really liked the fact that she in her confessionals was you need to play, you're playing Survivor and you have to make the right moves, but it's also about luck. And I appreciated that. I really, at this point, was I want Aubrey to win. I really didn't think Rizzo was going to make it to the final three. I was I think he's going to lose at fire making. And I was right. Anyways, Aubrey now gets to choose who goes to the fire and who she's taking to the final three. And she chooses Joe to go to the final three with her. And so it's Jonathan and Rizzo who are going to be facing off at the fire, both of whom had previously lost at the fire on their seasons, which I thought was so good narratively. Okay, one person's going to be redeemed and one person's going to repeat their same mistake. Leading up to the final fire, there's a lot of practicing of making a fire. Jonathan's doing it really fast. Rizzo's really struggling. In a teary-eyed confessional, he's talking about the position he's in, and he keeps being the man, the myth, legend, Rizogod. And you know what? That was funny. I love the fact that he kept spelling out Rizgod. That was so funny to me. Like, again, I feel a fondness towards. And this is when Joe kind of like really began to win me over because he begins to like give Rizzo like tips and help him with like making fire. And that was really sweet. That was really sweet. Like, that was very nice of Joe. Like, he didn't need to do that. He was safe. He might have a better chance against Jonathan than he did Rizzo. I don't really know. I think Joe didn't really have a chance regardless. No hate to Joe. But that was nice. That was very nice. He didn't have to do that. Like, he hasn't. I mean, apparently him and Rizzo did have like a bond that wasn't really highlighted in the edit. Um, but based off of the edit, they weren't particularly aligned, him and Rizzo. So it was something he didn't need to do, but was just very wholesome. And like that compared with how emotional he was when Aubrey chose him, like I am feeling a bit of a fondness towards Joe. I still find his approach to Survivor a little bit annoying, but this did warm my heart. I was like, you know what? You have a heart. I don't know if Jonathan. Sorry. You know what's so funny is there are tweets of people being like, guys, it's been enough. Can we stop clowning on Jonathan? Like, no. I mean, I also like this is the last time to talk about Survivor 50, and therefore hopefully Jonathan. So let me clown on him one last time, okay? But anyways, that was very sweet. Okay, that brought me. I was like, oh, that's so nice, and it seems like there's a bit of like, okay, maybe it will be close. At this point, I still felt like Rizzo was going to lose just because Jonathan was doing it so quickly. And Rizzo was like getting a head start, but I think the amount of like the practice he was doing and the way that Joe helped him, like if this had started at the beginning and he was continuously in any free time he had practicing how to make fire, maybe he would have caught up with Jonathan, but Jonathan had been making fire like every day. So at this point, like it felt like an uneven playing field. But before they go to fire in the live studio audience, Jeff Probst brings out Rizzo and he's like, so Rizzo, tell me about your 2 seasons with the fire. And he's like, you know, I played with House Money. I did whatever. He gives his little spiel. And then Jeff's like, okay, you join us here as the last member of the jury. There's like a silence that washes over the room, and he's like, "What just happened?" And they're like, they haven't seen fire yet. So he's like, "Fire hasn't happened." And Jeff's like, "Well, I don't know what's happened, but we'll see." Like he. And then when they come back from the commercial break, he's like, "So like what we had originally planned to do was watch fire, then bring Rizzo out to talk about losing to fire. But what we're going to do instead is like, now you know Rizzo loses in the fire and you're going to watch it now, enjoy watching." And it was sad. It was sad to watch Rizzo lose in the fire. I honestly have to say, I think that as unserious as this was and like as big of a mistake as that was, I am kind of glad that I didn't have to watch Rizzo lose in fire, not knowing that Rizzo was going to lose in the fire. Like, I think that would have been more stressful because I feel like I would have had like a glimmer of hope, and my hope just disappeared. And I was like, okay, it's Jonathan. I mean, at this point, I was pretty sure based off of spoilers. Like, I saw a spoiler last week after Cirie and Rick Devens went home. That people were like, guys, Tiffany and Rizzo are out next, and then it's Jonathan, Joe, and Aubrey in the final 3. I believe some of that was based off of like the Kalshi voting and all of that. Like, don't even get me started on that shit. Anyways, so like I going into it kind of thought that that's how things were gonna go, but I try to watch things even if I know a spoiler, being like I'm not factoring that in. So I do think I still would have been anxious to some level watching Rizzo do the fire against Jonathan. So I'm glad that I went into it knowing that Rizzo was gonna lose, but it was still upsetting. It was still upsetting because again, I hate Jonathan. So true. At the final tribal, I love the final tribal. Genuinely, of my Survivor journey, it's definitely one of my favorite things. I love the tribal council in general. Like, I understand that it's not the same game, and I don't know how they would do it, but it's genuinely something that I really, love about Survivor, and them kind of like hashing everything out and talking through the events and where people are going, and like a lot can be revealed at a tribal council in a way that I find really compelling. And I really love the way the final tribal happens, where everybody ends to ask a question and then they like jump off of the question, and like in a really, really like natural way, that I really, as a Big Brother fan, wish we had something like this in the Big Brother, you know, because back in the day they did do like pre-recorded long jury questioning and then they would cut it down, kind of like they do with the tribal. But now the jury roundtable is like hours long, and that's edited down to be like 15 minutes, not even. Maybe like 15, 20 minutes. It depends on the season. But it's cut down to be very brief. So we only get snippets of what the jury is thinking. And then the questions are like pre-written. They ask like one sentence questions. It's like very standard. There's no like human, like it doesn't feel as natural as like the tribal council. Like somebody would say something and somebody be like, what was your question? Or like, I don't want to step in. Like at some point, Stephanie like purely just complimented Jonathan and was like, I think you're the total package. And then people were like, it's anybody's game. Okay, let's not like jump to conclusions about like Jonathan winning. Like you guys are out. Like I really liked that. Like it felt very natural, and like you could see the lines that were drawn and the way people were trying to sell Jonathan's game. And then the people who were very clearly not really vibing with Jonathan's game, but overwhelmingly wasn't this thing of like, it didn't feel like like I don't know, if I feel like you can really prepare very well, like script answers a lot better in like a Big Brother type game, because it's like going into it, if I like in Big Brother, if you're in the finals and you have a little bit of time to think about like, okay, what would I answer? They're always about the same questions. Okay, sometimes you get a like, we don't feel like you were very nice to us. Why should I give you my vote if you didn't give me your respect? Like that maybe is something that you're not prepared to answer. But overwhelmingly, it's like, what is your big game move? What's something that you think you did better than the other person? It's really, really boring and like rote. You know, it's like, okay, I know what you're going to ask now, blah, blah, blah. And it's like really fast and like, I don't know. I love this about a final tribal where it's like somebody says something and somebody gets to comment on what the other person's saying and then expand on it. Or at some point, somebody asked one question and then they started talking about it, and another person stepped in and asked a clarifying question. And then they went back and they were like, okay, Jonathan, actually, you didn't answer the original question. Can you? I just really like the way the final tribal works. Basically, it was very much giving like there's a group of people who are really, really pro Jonathan. And then kind of the rest of the people, it felt more up in the air, but it was like, okay, they don't seem as down with Jonathan's approach. A lot more people were like really pro Aubrey. And at this point, I wanted Aubrey to win. I think Jonathan, I don't know. He really irritates me. And whatever. I need to calm down. I really think that, I don't remember who said it. Was it Christian? But somebody said that Survivor is all about like, it's like a narrative competition and they have to like tell the most compelling story about why they deserve to win. And I just think of the three people, Aubrey did the best job, like explaining her position, what she learned from her previous her previous runs, what she did differently. She like owned ways that like at some point they were like, what? Somebody asked like, what was the biggest secret you kept? And she was like, I didn't really keep secrets. I used the information that was given to me when needed. And then somebody was like, so you didn't keep secrets? And then she's like, I didn't tell everybody somebody was like, oh, so you spilled everything? And she's like, I didn't tell everybody every information that came, but like no information was like off limits. So if I knew something and I felt like I could use it, then I would use it. But if I didn't need to use it, I didn't use it. And like she just did a really good job answering the question and explaining how she did things better than previous seasons, how her approach changed, the way she adapted in the game of like, she was aligned with these people, but she was never too aligned with anybody. So then when they kind of started falling, she was able to pivot. And I do think she did a really good job of like playing the middle in a way that was like very, like she didn't, I feel like there's a stigma to playing the middle, or like what we in Big Brother call being a floater, because it's kind of like you're viewed as, even Chrissy, I think, called her passive, when it's like you're not, there is a way to play the middle where you're just passive and you're not really like making any decisions. But I think to play the middle skillfully, it's like it's aligning with people when you know it's going to help you, but then jumping ship when you know that aligning with them is going to hinder your game. And I think Aubrey did that really well, where she was aligned with people. But if those people got into hot water, she wasn't going to like stay in the hot water with them out of loyalty. And I think she did a good job selling her case. I was very satisfied with the Aubrey win by the end. Like I was happy that she won. You know, she seemed like, you know, and she did say that she's going to, the first thing she's going to do is take Rick Devens to a nice dinner. And you know what? Thank God. Because he really deserves it. At some point, literally, Jeff says, "Thank you, Mr. Beast, for the $2 million." I'm like, where's the thank you, Rick Devens? If somebody else was there and they flipped the coin, the $2 million might not have gotten one. Okay, it was yes, Mr. Beast gave the other $1 million. Like, let's be real, that's like a write-off for him, and $1 million is like literally nothing to Mr. Beast, because he hoards wealth in a very disgusting way. I don't need to go on my I hate Mr. Beast tangent again, but I hate Mr. Beast. So like we don't need to like thank Mr. Beast for the $1 million. Okay, Rick Devens flipped the coin and landed it. Like it, yeah. You can at least shout out Rick Devens. The votes are 8-3. The 3 votes for Jonathan are Chrissy, Coach, and Stephanie, I believe. I know it was Stephanie. I think Chrissy and Coach. So those are 3 votes. Everybody else votes for Aubrey. Nobody votes for Joe, RIP. And Aubrey also gets a car. So congrats to her for getting a car as well. And then Cirie gets a fan prize again of $100,000. Should have been $1 million. But anyways, my biggest takeaways from this season, I'll always be grateful to Survivor 50 and Cirie specifically for getting me to watch Survivor 50, because it began my journey into watching other seasons of Survivor, and I've become a fan. Now, I wouldn't call myself a super fan. I wouldn't pretend that I've been a fan for years and years and years, because I understand that the show's been on for 25 years, or 26 years. It's been on for like my entire life, basically, and I'm not trying to act like I've always been here. I haven't. I'm new to Survivor. Now, one thing about me, when I start watching a show, I try to do my research. I try to watch old seasons. I try to understand the history of things, so I don't like talk out of turn. But sometimes I do, because I honestly, the thing about Survivor is I'm trying to watch seasons unspoiled. So I'm not doing too much research, because like one time I literally Googled like, has there ever been a unanimous winner? And I got spoiled on who wins token teams. So like in general, I try not to Google, because I'm like, it'll pop up, and I can't expect the internet not to spoil a show that's like, you know, but I don't want to know who wins what season. So I'm avoiding like diving in too much until I watch like all the seasons I want to watch unspoiled. Because I like not knowing who wins. Like I really enjoy that. Maybe that's the Big Brother fan in me, okay? But my biggest takeaways, there were too many twists. Like there were too many twists. I didn't like all of the twists. It's like, we're merging, but we're actually 2 separate tribes, and oh, we're 2 separate tribes again, and there's multiple votes. And like I really didn't like all of the twists. It got really frustrating and annoying, and I didn't like them. I love an idol, like genuinely. That's what I have learned in my Survivor watching journey, is I love an idol. I love like people going home with idols. I love a fake idol. I love like playing an idol on somebody else. I love playing an idol on yourself when you needed it and screwing everybody over. I really love the use of an idol. And I think that's part of the reason I really hated the twists this season, because I'm like, the Billie Eilish Boomerang idol flop of the century, like there wasn't like good idol play, because like Aubrey used hers to flush it. Rizzo kept his until the end. everybody else, like it was a flop. It was a flop. Nobody went home with the idol in their pocket and then it boomerang. It was really annoying. I didn't like it. I did not like the Billie Eilish boomerang idol. I did want to say that as I was watching Survivor Heroes Villains, I sent my sister a text message that I said JT would have loved Boomerang Idol because in Heroes Villains he gives his idol to somebody on another tribe. Like literally, he wanted to like he would have slayed the Boomerang Idol. Okay, he was giving away his idols that weren't Boomerang idols. If the other person on the other tribe had used it on themselves, it wouldn't have come. Like nothing would have happened. Like if they had gone home with the idol just would have been on a plane. Which, by the way, it's crazy work. Okay, JT assuming what's happening on the other tribe, and then using your idol to try to like prevent the thing that you assume is happening on the other tribe when that's not what's happening. So unserious, so silly. But he would have loved a Boomerang Idol. Okay, he was basically DIYing them. But the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol was really, really like, I don't know. I just, the twists I feel like ruined the core game in a way that I found like I didn't like all of the twists. I didn't. And again, I think In the Hands of the Fans was really stupid. I don't think that they should have that kind of a theme for a show that airs so because the fans, sure, they voted on the last challenge and like that did help Aubrey in an interesting way for the story, but it's like the fans can't do much if we're not watching along in real time and reacting to the things of the game. And you can't do that in Survivor because it doesn't air in real time. So, like, in that regard, I just don't think In the Hands of the Fans works, especially if you're introducing multiple, like, twists and the twists are coming from super fans and the super fans are just other, so like, they're just celebrity super fans, as Jeff called them. Like at that point, just don't like it wasn't in the hands of the fans. If there were going to be twists like that, why couldn't you have had fans come up with ideas then? If it was going to be like, oh, a Boomerang Idol, and then you just say Billie Eilish came up with it. You just wanted like celebrity names attached to things instead of like it really being in the hands of the fans. But anyways, that's all I have to say about Survivor. Okay, jumping into Hacks season 5, episode 9. This episode was called The Garden, and it was more stressful than I anticipated it being. Okay. I don't know why. I genuinely was like, okay, the garden, the Madison Square Garden show, I didn't think that there was going to be a huge conflict. Maybe that's stupid, okay? But I really was like, I don't know. And I will say that the way they did this, I think was really well done, because I think obviously when you're writing a show, there does need to be some kind of conflict. And I think this kind of conflict is better than like if she had like bombed or something, had gone horribly wrong in a different way. Anyways, let me just get into it. Deborah, it opens with her on the Breakfast Club breaking her silence. She's had the gag order, and this is the first place that she wanted to go to break her silence. We see her preparing for the Madison Square Garden show. Ava and Jimmy go to pitch her show to the network, and they don't like it. They're like, why? We just don't know why you, of all people, need to be telling this story. Like, anybody could tell this story. We don't feel like it's coming from you, basically, is their point. So they don't love the who's coming to dinner, the house is owned by a lot of people idea. Ava and Deborah are in like the hotel in New York the day before the Madison Square Garden show. And there was like it's like a fun bantery moment where Deborah wants to like call for room service, and Ava's like, you don't use the phone for that. You have to scan a QR code and like order online or whatever. And it's really funny banter. And then Ava realizes, like, she comes up with an idea, and her idea for the show is, instead of it being like a bunch of young people living in a house, she's gonna basically like fictionalize her relationship with Deborah, where it's like your only friend is like an older woman and all of the issues that they have with like the age barrier and the technology barrier, and she's going to make that into the show is basically her idea. And they like it, but I'll get to it. Outside of the Madison Square Garden show, there begin to be some red flags of things that are going to go wrong. Okay, none of the Little Debbies were able to get tickets, and they weren't able to get them from scalpers either. Now, this would be a red flag for me because I'm like, okay, you can't, shows sell out very quickly. I understand how that is. Okay, I couldn't get tickets to the Olivia Rodrigo concert, but I guarantee you that there are going to be resale tickets for the Olivia Rodrigo concert. So that nobody being able to find resale tickets at all would be a red flag. Like, there's always going to be resale tickets because one, of scalpers, but two, like, I've had to resell tickets. Like, I've had to sell tickets because something came up and I couldn't go to the event. Actually, the Olivia Rodrigo Guts tour, I had tickets for a show in Palm Springs. And I was going to go with my sister, and then my sister ended up not being able to go. And I couldn't find anybody else to go with me. And the thing is, if it was just in LA, like maybe I would have gone by myself. But because it was in Palm Springs, I didn't want to go. I don't live in that area, and I didn't want to, like, because I wasn't going to get a hotel. Okay, I was going to drive there, go to the concert, and then drive home. So I didn't want to do that alone. So we ended up selling those tickets, and I've still never seen Olivia Rodrigo in concert. It's fine. It's fine. I wasn't meant to go to that show. It's okay. But like, obviously people are going to need to sell tickets for if things like that come up, and also obviously scalpers. So there being no resale tickets, it's like, okay, something's fishy. But I still didn't predict what was going to happen. Anyways, the show's going to begin, but there's no foot traffic. They've never seen anything like it. Nobody's here. Nobody's at the arena, okay? Or the hall. I don't know what Madison Square Garden is. Nobody's here. Nobody's here, okay? And then Deborah walks out. Oh, Deborah in the green room says that she knows Joey Behar is behind this. That cracked me up. She walks out on stage, and the only person sitting in the audience, completely empty audience, is Bob Lipka. And I was livid at this point. I was livid. I was like, hasn't Deborah suffered enough? Like, I was so sad. I'm like, she was so proud and happy to have sold this out. Like, I was so upset. I'm sorry. I was so upset. I was like, how dare he? How dare he? And this is just, like, unfortunately very true and very real in a lot of ways, of people being silenced. And like it just makes me really sad, because it's like, she was smeared in the press. They erased her story. They did this gag order. She couldn't perform. She couldn't speak for like a long time. Okay. Then she finally has her moment when she can speak, and they don't want her to speak so badly that they buy out everything. And then he's basically like, sign an NDA. And she's like, no, which also, I have to say, I understand, I guess, the idea of doing so, I guess, because it's like, you're trying to silence her, but it's like, what makes you think that she's going to take the NDA at this point? She's been under a gag order for like a year and a little bit. And I have to say, as somebody who's been silenced, obviously not to this degree, but I have my experience with like people telling you don't talk about something. And from my experience, obviously every person's different, but there becomes a moment where like, you're like, fuck you, I want to say what I want to say, and I'm not going to let anybody tell me what I can't say. So I don't understand why he thinks immediately after the gag order is up, she's going to once again be silent when she finally feels like she's free to speak. Like, it makes no sense that they thought this was a good approach. Like, this is just going to like blow back on you, because now she's genuinely going to look like all of the narrative that was able to shift away from them looking bad and them being the bad guys, and they were able to frame Deborah as being like a crazy, irrational person. All of that is just going to disappear when she can now say, yeah, literally nobody was, like, they bought out the entire venue. And you have witnesses, because the venue employees saw that nobody was there. Bob Lipka was the only person there. Like, it's not like something that they can say she's making up. So then it's like, that just makes you guys look guilty and makes it seem like you were indeed forcing her to either fire, like, the whole reason she quit was because they were forcing her to fire Ava. Like, now anything that you could use to smear her is like null and void, because she's like, they were literally trying to silence me because they didn't want me to in any way tell a joke that was about them or about being silent. Like, I don't really know. It feels really stupid on their part. And also, like, I don't like, did they genuinely just feel like they were going to like beat her confidence to the ground to the point where she'd be like, you know what, yeah, I'll just sign my voice away? She just had to deal with the gag order. Anyways, the scene after, when they're back in the green room and everybody's freaking out and like so angry, was comedy gold. Ava's like, he needs to get a life. And if I'm telling you you need to get a life, you're a fucking loser. And I have never felt more sane. I've never felt more sane. Because if I tell somebody they need to get a life, they're also a fucking loser. I felt so understood. I felt so understood, because I too would be like, you know what? If I'm telling you you need to get a life, you're a fucking loser. And there are some people I would say that to, okay? They're all mad. Kayla's like, we need to, okay. And then immediately after Ava says that, she's like, hey Siri, Google how to sink a super yacht. No AI. Then Kayla's like, Jimmy's like, this has to be illegal. This there has to be something. We need to call it a press conference. Kayla's like, we need to Luigi. Like, it was so funny. Like, genuinely such a good scene of hacks. And Deborah, of all of them, is like the most calm. She's like, no, we're gonna do the show for free. That way he can't mess with the ticket sales, and anybody who wants to come can come. And Jimmy's like, this is the only date the garden had. And she's like, I want to do it in Central Park. And he's like, okay, we'll find something like in a few months. And she's like, no, I want to do it now, which is not helping the, I fear that Deborah may be deathly ill anxiety that I currently have. And again, if this podcast episode goes out after the finale, I have not seen the finale. So I don't know if she is deathly ill and she's going to die. That's just how I'm feeling, because why does she need to do it right away? I really feel like she's about to die. Anyways, she needs to do it this weekend. There is there had been a concert, so there's still a stage. Like, there had been a concert in Central Park the day before, so there's still a stage. So they're like, okay, we'll get that. They go and they try to convince them to leave the stage up. And at first they're like, no. But then the person in charge is somebody who we've previously met. The character's name is Reed. And she and Deborah had like a disagreement, and she had fired her. So it was like, oh no. But then she comes around. She's like, you know what? You firing me, it was like my rock bottom, and then I've never been better. Okay, so yeah, I'll move this around. We can manage the keeping a stage and then still getting, I can't remember what band it was, to their next stop. So like, she says yes, but she's like, you need to get permits from the city, because I'm not messing, like, I don't want them to be mad. That is a non-starter. So go check with them. And so then Jimmy and Kayla go to get the permits. They are very like resistant about giving them the permits. And then the employee that they're speaking to starts playing like a podcast, and the podcast is the Xena Rewatch podcast that Jimmy produces. And like, before it starts, he like says something that's gonna happen. And she's like, how do you know that? Like, this just came out. And he's like, well, I listened to it already because I produced the show. And so they bond, and she fast tracks the permits so they can perform in Central Park. And I really like this detail of like the Rewatch podcast, that like, I like the way everything connects in the show, of like things that are brought up in passing earlier, or like little mini storylines where it's like, what does the Rewatch podcast really have anything to do with other things that are going to happen later in the season? But then it does like come into play. They mention a blackout's happening a lot, and then the blackout happens. Like, I think the show does a really good job of having like episode by episode beats, but it all leading to like one big story. And it's been this way like most of the seasons, where it's like obviously episode by episode there are beats, but it's leading towards a bigger story, you know, in a way that I think works really well. Like it's just a very well written, well executed show, in my opinion. And these feel like simple, like obvious things, but I don't feel like every show in this day and age or in general like does these things as well as I think Hacks does, which is why I'm pointing them out, because I feel like I've watched many shows where I'm like, okay, I like the characters and I like the general plot, but it doesn't feel as cohesive and thought out and like planned and like well executed as Hacks does. Like it feels fun and the acting is good and the characters are interesting, but this feels like very structured in a really, really satisfying way as a viewer, if that makes sense. But anyway, also earlier in the episode, Marty's there and he like got fired or something, and Deborah hires him to work at their casino. I don't really care about Marty, but I felt the need to mention it. So shout out to Marty, I guess. I really don't like Marty. I don't dislike him. I just don't care about him at all. Then we see like a promo run. She goes on the Today Show. She goes on The View and buries the hatchet with Joy Behar. There's a very brief clip of her on like Trisha Paytas's YouTube channel, which was really interesting to me. I feel like I just mentioned Trisha Paytas being on this. Well, yeah, because I was catching my last episode. I was catching up on the last few episodes of Hacks. So like the Trisha Paytas thing, I was surprised to see her back. Chris Briney's character, whose name I do not remember, nor did I care to look it up, he even makes a post about how silencing women is never okay. He's like, despite the differences Deborah and I have had, like what's happening to her is not cool, and silencing women is never okay. Like, okay, slay. Ava had previously had a call after she like figured out what she wanted the show to be about, and they had liked it. And before the show in Central Park, she gets a call, and the network greenlit a pilot. They want to produce it. They really like the idea. So that's all good news. Then Jimmy explains to Deborah that they had to shut off some of the entrances, and Deborah's like, no, but like that's the entrance to the best spot. And Jimmy's like, no, it's because it's already overcrowded. Like they're estimating that it's like over 30,000 people. I think that is a record for a comedy show in Central Park. And then Ava's like, that would be a good lead. Sounds like a good lead to an obituary. Why? Like, she's gonna die. Like, she's literally gonna die. I'm like so anxious. Like, she's literally gonna die. She's literally gonna die. I need to calm down. And then the episode ends with like the beginning of her set. She says, first I want to acknowledge that we're on stolen land. And Ava is like, I didn't even tell her to say that. She makes a joke about like, if you're here for the Deborah Vance show, you're in the right place. If you're here for anonymous gay sex, you're also in the right place. And it ends with her like looking out to the crowd all happy. And it was very beautiful. I'm really scared about the finale. I don't want it to be over. But I will be talking about that. I don't know what else I'm going to talk about. Maybe it worked out well last week where I did like 2 episodes that were like shorter. So maybe what I'll do is do an episode just about the Hacks finale and like my concluding thoughts on the show as a whole. And the episode will be like 45 minutes instead of an hour. Maybe I'll do that and get that out sometime this weekend to kind of do like 2 episodes this week as well. And then like starting next week, I'll start some kind of new show. I don't know which show. Like maybe I should talk about Off Campus, but the thing is all the episodes are out, so I feel like I'd have to do like a deep dive on Off Campus. And I have other shows that I care to do deep dives on first. If I'm gonna like dedicate my time to rewatching a show and doing a big episode about that. So I don't really know. I don't know which show I'm gonna talk about next. But I hope you enjoyed my coverage for Survivor 50. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Hacks Season 5, Episode 9. And you'll hear from me maybe later this week, maybe next week. I don't really know. I don't really know what show I'm going to talk about next. Maybe I'll get a second episode out in a few days and then really lock in and do a deep dive on another show before I do off campus, or maybe talk about off campus. I don't really know. I don't really know what I'm going to do next. I'll figure it out. Thank you so much for tuning in and for bearing with me. I hope you have a great week.